You'll never rank up without actually understanding rotations and positioning, and if you watch until the end of this video, you'll see exactly why I say that. Rocket League isn't about how cool your flip reset looks or how fast you can air dribble. Those things help, sure, no one's really going to argue that, but they mean absolutely nothing if you're constantly out of position or breaking rotations. Every second you're out of position is an open invitation for your opponents to score a free goal. And if you think that that doesn't apply to you, then you're the exact person I'm talking about in this video. Let's break this down step by step. What even is good positioning? A lot of you probably think it just means sitting back, waiting for your chance to hit the ball, or worse, chasing it endlessly, trying to do everything yourself. Both of these are the wrong answer. Good positioning means being exactly where your team needs you to be when they need you to be there, while always maintaining the structure of the game. Think of rotations and positioning like the framework of a building. You don't see it working, but it's the only thing holding the entire building together so that it doesn't collapse. When you're driving randomly on a field, cutting off your teammates, or even challenging at the wrong time, you're basically removing bricks from that foundation, and then what happens? Everything will just crumble down. Here's an example of bad positioning I see all the time. Your last man, the ball is in the opponent's corner, your two teammates are challenging, and what do? You creep up, right? Because you're so sure that the ball is going to bounce in the middle of the field, and you want that really cool goal, but then it doesn't, and the opponent clears it right over your head, and suddenly it's a 2v0. In other words, it's a wide open net. Game over. Here's what you should have done. You should have stayed slightly back. You should have kept an eye on the play, be ready to cut off a clear if the ball pops out, but don't overcommit. Your job as the last man isn't to chase the ball. That's the first man's job. Your job is to keep the play alive for your team. Without someone anchoring the rotation, the whole play collapses. Now I know what some of you are thinking, okay, fine, I just won't push up as much. Wrong again. Hanging way too far back is pretty much just as bad as being out of position, because now you're giving your opponents all the space in the world to make a free attack on you. What a lot of people don't realize is rotations and positioning aren't passive things, they're proactive. You need to be thinking one step ahead pretty much all game. Always putting yourself in a spot that creates pressure without leaving your entire team vulnerable. That's the balance. If you still don't believe me, all you have to do is just look at any pro gameplay. They make it look so effortless because the rotations are pretty much flawless. When one player challenges, the second player is always in a position to follow it up, and the third player is always ready to defend or keep the play going. That's why it feels impossible to break through them. They're never out of position. And the reason you're stuck in your rank is because you're making these same mistakes over and over and over again without even realizing it. But here's the really good news. This isn't a skill gap. It's a mindset gap. Anyone can learn rotations and positioning. You just need to approach it like you would any other skill you want to improve. It's not really something that's optional though. So now that we've identified the problem, we need to actually fix the problem. And we have to fix the problem by breaking it down into specifics, because me telling you to learn rotations and positioning doesn't really help, does it? If you want to actually apply this, first you need to rethink your priorities in a game. Most players, especially at the lower ranks, are way too focused on hitting the ball. Every time they see it bounce, they think things like, let me go for that, or that's my ball, and they rush towards it. This is the single biggest reason you're stuck. Rocket League isn't a race to the ball. It's about control, and control comes from being in the right place at the right time. It's not just about slamming your car into the ball and hoping for the best. Here's the golden rule that I've always followed, and I'm top 100 most of the time. You should only go for the ball if you can do something useful with it. If your touch is just going to give possession back to the other team, then all you've done is set your team up to defend a counterattack, and it's better to rotate back, reposition, and let your teammate take the shot instead of you. And this brings me to a really important concept that way too many players ignore, and it's trusting your teammates. And I know, I hear it every video, your teammates are trash, they miss easy shots, blah, 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 whatever. Sometimes they even own goal. But if you don't trust them to do your job, it's going to make your game even harder than it would be if you did have a good teammate. Let me explain this with the scenario. Your teammate is challenging the ball in the corner. You're the second man. Instead of rotating to a spot that you can follow up their play in, you double commit because you don't think they're going to hit the ball. So the ball pinches out into the midfield, and now no one's back to defend that ball. And that's not on your teammate, that's on you double committing. So trusting your teammates, that doesn't mean assuming they'll never make mistakes. It's going to happen, it's inevitable. It means positioning yourself in a way that supports their play while also covering for their mistakes. For example, If your teammate is going for a really risky aerial, you don't need to go flying in after them. Instead, position yourself in a spot where you can react to whatever happens next. If they hit the ball, you're ready for the follow-up. If they miss, you're ready to defend that too. Now, this leads me into another really critical aspect of rotations: spacing. Good spacing is what actually keeps your team from running into each other or double committing all the time. You should always be thinking about where your teammates are and positioning yourself to cover what they're not. Here's a really easy way to think about it. If you divide the field into thirds, front, middle, and back, and at any given moment, your team should have one player in each of those zones. If you're the first man, your job is to pressure the ball and create plays. If you're the second man, you're the backup. You're there to support the first man or take their place if they need to rotate out. And if you're the last man, you're the safety net. In other words, you're the one covering the goal. You're the last man back. It's your job to defend in the worst case scenario. And let's talk about the defending part for a second, because this is a really important area where position gets completely overlooked. Most players think defending just means sitting in the net and waiting for a save opportunity. That's wrong. Good defense starts way before the ball even gets near your goal. If you're a third man and you see the other team about to clear the ball, your first instinct shouldn't be to drive back into your goal. It should be to cut off the play before it happens. Position yourself to challenge the clear, or at least slow down the play so your teammates have time to rotate back. The more you can stop plays before they fully develop, the less time you'll spend panicking on defense. Now we've talked about what rotations are, why they're so important, and how to fix really common mistakes, but here's the final piece of the puzzle: consistency. You can't just learn rotations once, apply them for a few games, and expect to rank up overnight. You need to make good positioning and rotations a habit. If you're inconsistent, sometimes rotating correctly, but other times panicking and ball chasing, you're still going to lose games even when you know what you should be doing. Here's the mindset shift you need to make. Every decision you make on the field should serve the team, not just yourself. This means that every rotation, every touch, every moment of hesitation should be calculated and intentional. And when you're consistent with this, your gameplay will improve dramatically, not just for you, but for the entire team. Now let's address a really common excuse I hear. But my teammates don't rotate either. Why should I? Look, I get it. Playing with random teammates is frustrating. I play the game just like you do. But here's the thing. Good rotations don't just help you. They literally force your teammates to play better too. When you're in the right position, you create structure on the field, and your teammates will naturally fall into that rhythm. For example, if you're consistently rotating back when you should, your teammates will realize they don't need to double commit because you have them covered. If you're spacing properly, your teammates will have more freedom to take the plays they're comfortable with without worrying about bumping into you. You become kind of like the glue that holds the entire team together, and that's a skill that works in any rank. Let's also take a quick pit stop and talk about decision making really quickly, because this is an area where most players struggle with consistency. A lot of people think they're following rotations, but they're still making bad decisions on when to challenge, when to rotate, and when to back off. Here's a really cool tip. Stop ball watching. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen players mess up their positioning because they're so focused on the ball that they forget to check where their teammates and opponents are. Good decision making comes from awareness. You need to know what's happening on the field at all times, not just where the ball is. I would start asking myself questions during the game, like where are my teammates? Where are my opponents? If I challenge this ball, can I make a positive play? If I miss, will I leave my team vulnerable? The more you train yourself to think like this, the easier it will be to make consistent, smart decisions. Now let's tie it all together. The key to mastering rotations and positioning isn't just knowing what to do, it's committing to it every single game, even when it feels really awkward. Even when your teammates aren't doing their part, you need to be the one keeping the structure intact. And remember, rotations aren't about being perfect. Mistakes are going to happen, and you're going to overcommit sometimes. You're going to miss a challenge, and the important thing is that you constantly are learning from those mistakes and applying what you've learned to the next game. And what I would recommend you do after you're done watching this video and subscribing is the first thing, you need to load up a replay of one of your recent games. Because if you're not even watching your replays, it's really hard to know what mistakes you're making in the moment. So watch your replays and watch it from your perspective, but don't just focus on your mechanics, because that's really not much to do with positioning and rotation, which is the problem. You need to focus on your positioning inherently. Were you in the right spot at the right time? Did you break rotations? Could you have positioned better to support your team? And the thing with replay reviewing is if you get to a high enough rank, like if you're GC2, GC3, you might get to a point where you will watch your replays and you literally don't understand what you're doing wrong. Like you might think that you have a perfect game, you're playing really well, maybe you make mechanical errors, but you might think your rotation's perfect. In my opinion, you should get a higher rank or a literal coach to watch your replays, because me, for example, I'm a coach. I can watch a GC3 or a low SSL's replay and explain them positioning issues they're having that they don't realize are issues because they haven't played the game long enough, or they haven't played at a high enough level where every mistake makes a difference. So if you're interested in a really high rank giving you a replay review, join my Discord and message me the word replay, and I'll get back to you really quickly and we can schedule a call over there. But that's all I have for you guys in this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.